All right, everyone. Welcome back to Those Couple of Geeks. I am so excited to get into the spooky mood with you all for our Halloween episode, our spooky special, if you will. So let's just go around and have everyone kind of say what their voices are so we know who is who. So I am Holly. I'll be hosting today. Vanna.
I'm Vanna. Oh my god, I'm dying today.
Adam.
Hello.
And Tyler.
Hello.
Lower and slower.
Oh, it's kind of big for the spooky vibes of today.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, Vanna's channeling her inner zombie by being almost half dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sorry, I meant part witch. I'm sorry.
Love you too. Anyways,
You should preface with that you hate zombies.
yes, I can't stand zombies, so love that. Love
I'm
that for having one of my
so
best friends get
sorry.
scared to a zombie. Anyways, what's freaking everyone's geek other than Vanna not having much of a voice?
Yeah, Vanna lost her voice partly due to illness and partly due to talking loudly last night, where we went to there's this place called Artisan Craft Bar and Distillery here in San Antonio, and they had a Halloween kawaii spooky night, I guess is what you'd call it. So it was like anime themed but Halloween, and they had cool cocktails and food truck outside, and then they had all these different vendor stalls where they sold a bunch of different earrings, necklaces, pop figures, a lot of different like anime kind of things. Like this one lady, she made crochet like stuffed animals, and so I bought Vanna a crochet Stitch doll from Lilo and Stitch. It's pretty cool,
Fun.
and she got some cool earrings, some crescent moon with black cat earrings that she's wearing right now. So yeah, that was a freaking our geek kind of thing. That's definitely in our alley, right? Like it's kind of wasn't really too spooky. It was more nerdy anime with alcohol vibes and
Hell
live
yeah.
music, and we liked it.
Heck yeah.
That like popped up on my Facebook as like an event you might be interested in going to because you all had put that you were interested in it. And I was like, oh, I would be into San Antonio. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind.
So close.
It seemed so cool. So
It's a
close,
super
yeah.
cool bar. The next time you guys come down to visit us in San Antonio, we'll definitely go there because it's a really cool. It's a neat place.
On the second Friday of every month, they pick an anime. So far, they've done Sailor Moon, Jujutsu Kaisen, and Dragon Ball.
Hell yeah.
We gotta plan a trip.
They have like anime themed cocktails surrounding that. So they had like the Kamehameha cocktail or whatever and stuff like that. You know, it's pretty cool.
I'd get drunk in an instant. Oh my god.
Yeah, and they do a good job. The bartenders make very good drinks.
Ooh.
Nice.
They did not skimp.
Oh yeah, that sounds so fun. Others?
Well, I can go. What's freaking my geek is your boy is designing stuff for number one, the podcast. So soon enough for the listeners and anyone that follows us out there, we're gonna get stickers and stuff together. I've been designing stuff on the side. Life gets busy, so it was supposed to be earlier, but hasn't moving forward yet. But finally finalizing stuff on that, so you might see some merch from us. But then on top of that too, your boy has started designing his own t-shirts. So one I just did that I'm waiting for in the mail is a One Piece one, where basically it has in kanji on one side of the arm, it has King of the Pirates, and then on the other side is all the crewmates, just their headshots for each of them. So from Zoro to Jinbei, all of the crewmates are on that side. And then on the back is Luffy, and it has Monkey D. Luffy with kanji. But yeah, no, I've been designing stuff. I designed Evolution one for Holly, since she wanted that.
Yeah.
And then I designed Jita one specifically too. So
Also for Holly.
yeah, well, for me and Holly, so she's gonna steal it sometimes. So
She looks like it's just for her.
yeah,
It's
I think
for
so.
me.
Yeah. But yeah, like I've been coming up with fun little designs. So if you guys ever are like, hey, I want like something, or you guys know someone in the San Antonio area that makes t-shirts and they just need designs, I'll make anime designs for you. because that's what I've been doing. Is I've just been like, all right, with the One Piece one, that really sparked it all. Where I was like, I really want to do that on like the side and the arm, like the whole crew and Luffy on the back and all that stuff. So yeah, that's what's been freaking my geek is I've been hard at work designing stuff for the podcast, for merch, and then also coming up with some fun little nerd stuff as well too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool.
It is. It is really cool. Like the designs that he comes up with, like it astounding. As someone who is like completely non-artistic, it just like is astounding to me because
Yeah.
I'm lucky if I can draw like a horse that doesn't look like it has four legs that are all at the same angle.
Yeah.
So
The classic stick figure horse.
yeah, exactly. The 2D horse that has four legs just out of its body. Anyways. Well, cool. Well, thanks, y'all. It's just fun to like be here and talk about Halloween and spooky stuff. This is my MO. So, for those of you that don't know, I have very, we'll say, diverse interests in video games. I'm currently playing Mario Rabbids, the new one. I love Pokemon, and then it just jumps all the way into horror. Like there's not a lot of in between there. So today we're going to just kind of be talking about horror video games, what we enjoy. This is going to feel more like a conversation than some of the games that we've played or the interviews we've done in the past couple of episodes. So, first I just want to like make sure to get everyone's point of view on where are you on the enjoying horror games spectrum. So, Tyler, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, background, I hated horror games when I was in high school. I was the biggest chicken, and then I started to date Holly and got kicked into the pool. So ever since then, I've read Stephen King. I read a lot of like different like horror thriller books, and the first ever game that basically was introduced to me as a horror game was Outlast from her. She was like, all right, it's Halloween, we're gonna do this, and I was like, I don't know if I want to. I really don't know. But yeah, I mean, for me, I do love my horror games. I love the spookums. So
Just love that you got kicked into the pool. That quote.
just
Yeah.
see
Yes.
poor Tyler sitting right next to the edge of the pool going, I don't know if I want to get in. And then you just see Holly back all the way up, and then you hear tick, 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 and then smack all right into the pool.
Yeah,
Well,
I also love that like Outlast is a common denominator here between me trying to get people to do horror game.
no, for sure. Outlast
Speaking of
is
which, Adam,
yeah, I was gonna say Outlast is definitely my like top horror game. Yeah, I've played quite a few horror games. In fact, I actually just recently finished a horror game that was very strange called Scorn. Came out very recently,
okay.
like early-ish mid-October, and it is there's no dialogue, there's no literary, there's nothing to read. Like it's a game where you play through it, and it's a story that you sort of piece together as you play through it, and it's weird and it's kind of gross. It's kind of like body horror-y kind of stuff too.
Mm,
I liked it. I enjoyed it. But yeah, I've played quite a few horror games. So when it comes to like my appreciation for horror, I wouldn't say I like go all in on horror, but I
mhm.
don't mind it. I much more prefer horror video games than I do to horror films. I don't really
Totally.
care for scary movies. I don't know, they're kind of corny. They're kind of not that fun to me. Every scary movie, like the classic thing people describe it as is like, yeah, it's really campy. And I feel like that just means like it kind of sucks. So that's my strong opinion on horror movies that I know that others might not share. Looking at you, Tyler.
Tyler literally looks like he's having like an allergic reaction. I don't know
Yeah, his
why.
face
Very
filled up
angry
with
with
anger.
you, Adam.
Yeah,
I'm very
dude, I'm
angry.
sorry. I know. It's a that's a hot take, I guess. But I feel like horror movies compared to like video games or like horror books, not as scary.
Okay, I will give you props on that because I mean, like, from where we are now in October till Halloween, I've been watching horror stuff. And yeah, there's a few that you're like, oh, God, please. No. Like, if you rewatch Friday the 13th now, it is the campiest, and, like, all the effects on it are just bad.
And
you
they
just
make the
laugh.
worst decisions. It's like
Yes,
they run
exactly.
into like the room, I'm like, what are y'all doing?
So I've always been one for Halloween. I liked all the Halloween. I actually watched the new one, which disappointed me slightly, but that's a different take. But anyway, there's some good horror movies out there, Adam. So I see you with the hey, hold on a minute, but at the same time too, I agree with part of it. So
Okay, I'll get a short list recommended from you and try out some that you would say are like the top 3 or something like that. I'll give them a shot. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I will.
If I haven't seen them already, I definitely would do that. But yeah, that's where I sort of fall on the horror spectrum.
All right, good stuff. And last but certainly not least, Vanna, where you at, girl?
Maybe a little bit the least. um, so I've seen Sinister. That's like my scary, like real horror movie I've watched that I enjoyed. I don't usually like seek out horror. I really enjoy comedy horror. So like the scary movies, my childhood. I have watched some of those really bad horror movies on Netflix with like Vince Vaughn and a few others that like I don't think were meant to be scary, but they're horror movies. They're just like gory. You know what I mean?
Wedding Crashers?
No. My nightmare. No.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
Spirited Away. That was pretty scary.
Social horror.
I've read a few thrillers, like his books, and I enjoy those. As far as video games go, I really haven't played many, if any, like real horror video games, but I did play Outlast 2, like the little baby game that they send out before the demo. I played the demo very intoxicated, and that was like a really fun time. Adam did not take my advice when we played together. I said we should leave our wife, move on. She's dead. She's obviously been taken. He said, you have to go through the school. I said, you really don't. That's about where that went.
He just was like,
Life's
just
all
leave
about
her.
choices.
She's dead. Yeah, she's gone. It's like, we're trying to save our wife. She's like, nah, let's get back in the car and drive out of here.
Oh my
I was like, okay, that's not an option though, you know?
Oh my gosh. So from what it sounds like is we truly are on like the spectrum, with Vanna and I being your caps, and then Adam and Tyler being more in the middle of it. With Adam being a little more into the horror video games and Tyler creeping his way up through to being more into horror video games. So I think this will be a pretty interesting conversation to just kind of talk through like what makes a game scary to you? Has that changed over time? Like I know for me, I find creatures and like ambiance to be the scariest part. Like knowing that something could be like some creature that I can't understand could be right around the corner or could just charge at me at any time. So like for me, The Last of Us is kind of like the example of that, or like Outlast where I can't even fight back. You know, something could like little piggy no right in the beginning that pulls you out from you creeping through. Like that kind of stuff terrifies me. But the gore or like random jump scares of just crows or stuff, that doesn't really do anything for me. Like
It is always the crows.
fine. Oh god. All I think of is like Until Dawn. Like it was everything in the forest was just there's nature.
Yeah.
It's spooky. So for me, I've always been more like creature based. Like I thought that, oh gosh, I always forget the name of it. The Will Smith movie, I Am Legend. That was a terrifying movie to me. Like that is one of the like pinnacle horror movies for me. And it is not a horror movie, but it's terrifying.
It's like an action movie, right?
It's a take on society. It's like oh my gosh, it's such like a political movie.
Wait, what?
It's so good.
It is.
It's so good.
It's a
'Cause
take
it's
on
all
society.
about-
We live in a society.
Yeah, because it's talking about like there was this cancer medication that came out, it changed people, and some people like it's a whole thing. But I think it's because I watched it at such a young age, and so I was more focused on the creatures, and I saw the version where, spoiler alert if you haven't seen I Am Legend, but also like if you haven't seen it by now, good luck. I saw the version where the creatures they get killed at the end rather than when they like spare him, you know, because I know that there's two different versions. I think if I had seen the spared one, I might have been like better with it, but I saw the one where it's like, all right, we die now.
In your defense, the spared one is the book.
And but that
So the
makes
movie is
That was
like
deleted scene. They reshot that. So that was the alternative ending. Was hey, here's ending 1, here's ending 2, and what the film or Warner Brothers said was they're like, we like this ending a lot better. It ties it up. We're not going to do this, all that stuff. So that was basically what it was. But yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, so knowing like that's where I'm at. What would you say? So Adam, where would you say what makes a game scary to you and has that changed at all?
So I would say that maybe it's changed. I don't know. I definitely used to be obviously more scared of like the monsters and stuff, kind of like you were saying, especially when I was younger. What I notice scares me more than anything. Well, no, it's not like a.
Giving
You
you
are
crap.
younger than me, so maybe you'll grow out of it.
I mean, I am the child of the group.
No, but what I've noticed now, with especially since I've played a couple of scary games this month, like I talked about earlier in the episode, I played that game Scorn, and I played The Evil Within recently, and I obviously played Outlast. What I've noticed is that the games that scare me the most, the features in those games, is when there's a lack of something to be seen. So meaning like
Mm,
there's one part in Outlast where you're down in like the sewers and it's dark and it's like you're wading through like sewer water or whatever, and like that feeling of like there could be something in here with me under the water or around a corner, but like I can't see it.
totally.
That's what scares me more. So when I was playing like the Scorn game, I would get kind of jumpy and scared, but then as soon as I would see like the creature coming at me, I would be like, like you have this little like gun thing that like goes like and like pokes, and I'd go up and I'd like poke them, and then they'd kill me, and I'd like have to restart at the checkpoint. I thought that was funny. So like the creature itself wasn't scary, but it was like the thought of
Yeah.
things gonna or something chasing you, down a hallway or something. It's like when you can't see it, that's the feeling that gets me the most in horror. And I think that's the same thing with horror films and stuff too. It's always like way scarier until you see the actual creature, and then it's like, oh, that's not that scary, because especially with like movies and stuff, it's typically like older movies, especially like the CGI and stuff, just wasn't really there to make the monster seem as what they wanted it to be. So
Yeah, I was gonna say for me that's the same with and I'm totally spacing on the name A Quiet Place. That's how it was for me with A Quiet Place 1. That movie was terrifying to me because you didn't know what they were until you did, obviously. But that's why A Quiet Place 2 didn't really do much for me because it was kind of like the whole tension, the ambiance, like I was talking about before, like was kind of gone because you knew what it was, you knew kind of what it was capable of, like you knew how to kill it at that point. So I feel
yeah,
you.
no, definitely. And even in like I Am Legend, like the parts of the movie
Yeah.
when he's like going through town and like the mannequins, and he's like, I'm like, wait,
Yes.
are the mannequins moving? Like, what's going on with that? Like that part scared me, and then it's like the zombies were like running. I was like, all right, well, now we're just like
Yep.
zombies. Like seen those a million times,
I think
not scary. So
I think they're actually classified as vampires from the book. So they're not
yeah,
actually
you are right
zombies.
about that.
So
But in the film, it kind of portrays them, I think, a little more
Mhm.
zombie-like. But you're right, they are
I would agree.
vampires.
yeah. So
All right. Vanna, what would you say makes a game scary to you?
I think I'll be honest, like the anxiety of not having control. So in a scary video game,
Yeah.
a lot of the time you have to follow the storyline, and like that's not my MO. You know what I mean? Like
Clearly, based on how you wanted
yeah.
to play Outlast 2.
If it was a scary enough monster, it could have followed me in the game wherever I went. I didn't
Well,
need to enter a creepy school.
I think that's super fair, actually. That is a really scary thing about video games, more so than other horror mediums, is the game wants you to go down the hallway and to the right, and it shows something skitter across that hall. But like you have to go down there because that's where you have to go in the game. There's no other option. So like knowing and forcing yourself to walk towards the scary thing is definitely like really hard to do. So yeah, Vanna talked about like not having that control to just be like, you know what, I'm not gonna go down that hallway. Like you don't have that choice in the game. Like if you want to beat the game, you have to keep doing it.
Yeah, like in a horror movie, someone does it and you're yelling at them. You know, you're like, stop, stop, like don't do it. You're so stupid. And you're thinking,
Yeah.
they're so stupid. And then in the video game, you have to be the stupid person. You're like, I wouldn't do that. Absolutely
Exactly.
not. I would not do that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's real. I mean, I think that can be both the best and the worst part depending on what video game it is. Like sometimes you are the one that has to be the really stupid ones that the story progresses, and then there's other times where like you get the choice of doing the smart thing and you're like, hell yeah, like I would do that. So it is interesting how depending on the game, like Outlast 1 versus Outlast 2. Outlast 2, there's a lot more paths that you follow where you have to do some of those things. Outlast 1, it's more split depending on the situation, on what path you need to go down, on if it is like, oh, that's actually kind of an intelligent choice, or like, haha, idiot. All right, Tyler, what about you? What makes a game scary to you?
More so for me, like when we're talking about video games, it's the jump scares. I hate them so much because I react in the way of a person that you would expect that hates jump scares. Jumping up, literally throwing stuff or throwing a punch in the way, or like for instance, when we first watched Outlast, I was like, "Oh, this is a perfect time to put my arm around Holly and everything like that." And then all of a
I
sudden,
remember this.
the big guy comes out of nowhere, and I was like, "Piggy, no, no!" And I like did that, and she goes, "What the heck? Like you hit my head." I'm like, "I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I just need to be over here." So literally, the last half of like watching Outlast, I was like this. I was like, "Okay, well, is it good?" Jump scare, mother trucker. Why? So it was a lot of that. So like when it comes to horror video games, when it comes to the horror genre, I love my creatures. I always like a creature feature. I grew up with the Universal monsters, with Dracula, Thing from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein. Like I liked those classics. Those always were like the classic monsters. I always liked that. It's the things that you can't stop, the ghosts, the stuff that it's like, okay, I have a shotgun. I can't do anything to a ghost with this, but those are the ones that really get me. I've gotten better with it because we actually listen to a podcast as well called Scared to Death, where they do talk a lot about it.
Oh, I've heard of
It's the
that.
same thing. It's the
Mhm.
same thing with BuzzFeed. These guys called they're from BuzzFeed Unsolved. Ryan and Shane. They do. They now have Ghost Files, is what they're called now. Where they go and they talk about a certain place, like whether it be like the Whaley House, where it's like a really haunted house, or like a demon possessed house from these stories. A lot of those have been intriguing to me now. So I mean, when it comes to the video games, like I've gotten more into like Alien Isolation, mixes of that creature feature with the sci-fi that I like.
Yeah.
I've been one for Resident Evil, and Phasmophobia with Markiplier has made me laugh at ghosts now, where it's like, oh, we have to find a ghost. Oh, wait, it's coming and it's going to kill you now. So, I mean, I've gotten better with that, but yeah, overall, it's the jump scare gets me, and then like darker places when something like skitters across and you're like, okay, am I gonna have an encounter now or what? Like, please,
Hmm.
please don't jump out of anywhere and scare the crap out of me. And then that's when they do.
Yeah.
Mhm. You're not
Jump
wrong.
scares are always scary. I'll say that. I agree with you. Like as much as I know they're coming sometimes, it still makes you like
Yeah,
jump, you know?
yeah. That's the
Like
thing I hate is you, especially like with Resident Evil Village. When I played that, there was moments where it was like skitter across. I'm like, okay, it's right around the corner. Nothing around the corner. Okay, well, I think I'm fine. Bah! What the hell?
yeah.
Yep.
It comes up from behind you, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, it came up at the one time where you're like, oh, hey, I'm fine. No.
LOL
Yeah,
JK.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel that. I think it's interesting that like there's overlap for all of us and yet it's just so distinct at the same time. And yet I feel like if we were to pool together like a whole bunch of different horror games that we enjoy or scare us, depending on if that's the same thing or if it's different for you,
Yeah.
we would still end up finding like a pool of similar games. So like I think out of all of this conversation, like there's just a couple games that I feel like might scare all of us, and that would be games like The Last of Us, where it kind of feels like it includes all these different pieces of ambiance, creatures, the jump scares, more of just the like not not knowing what's going to happen or what the creatures are, because there's different ones throughout all of it, and sometimes the people are the scary part.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I feel like The Last of Us is one that for all four of us we could say is a horror game that would be scary to us.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that because, like you said, people are scarier than the monsters themselves. I mean,
Mhm.
and that's what I loved about The Last of Us that really scared me, but then also made me keep going was something that said, hey, there's a story behind this. That story propelled me forward as well too. So like, it's not only just, hey, spook them. I'm like, I just run around shooting clickers and stuff like that. No, there was a genuine story that came out with it. So
Yeah.
Fully agree with that. That was, and like you said too, Holly, The Last of Us encompasses a lot of different, and that's why it was such a successful game. And I'm
Exactly.
really looking forward to that TV series too that they're making.
Yes.
yeah, me too.
Mhm.
Because the story's really good, and it compels you to keep moving forward in it, and it has all the different elements of horror that are good. Like it has the creatures, but it has like the tension with other people and with like your with everything with a zombie movie, right? Like someone gets bit and it's
Mhm.
like, oh, we got to kill them before they turn and get us. And then there's always the things chasing you down a hallway and you got to try to get through the gate really quick and close it at the last second. Like all those elements of scary,
Or like sneaking around and
Yeah.
stuff like that too.
Yeah, I feel like it's also interesting because like The Last of Us also plays on like your non-scared emotions, like your non-horror emotions with like Ellie, what happens in the very beginning with Joel's daughter, and like there's also those pieces of it too where like you're invested not only in like I need to get myself out of here, but like I have this other life that could potentially be like the rest of everyone else's lives too, but now it's kind of like my kid. Like I'm saying she is kind of like kid, so what do you do in that situation? So it's interesting how all of that is kind of put together.
I got real sad thinking about Joel's daughter in the beginning. That was the whole point where I got sucked into the game because it was literally I was sitting at a friend's house and they were playing it on the PS3. I was like, "Oh yeah, we're starting this fun game." I'm like, "What is it?" And they're like, "Just watch. I've played it before." I was like, "Okay." And literally at the end of that whole sequence, I won't spoil anything. I literally was like, ah! like sobbing because I was like, I want to know more, but at the same time too, I'm in for a heartbreak if I keep going.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sadness in those games for sure.
That is true. That is true.
And I think it's interesting, like, comparing it to the Resident Evil games because there are a lot of, especially the early game Resident Evil, like, there's a lot of similarities in the tropes that are at play. And yet, one of them does it so differently than the other. Like, The Last of Us is so much more emotional, and Resident Evil is so much more tension, in my point of view, at least.
And as the Resident Evil person that once kicked into the pool, he dove right into the Resident Evil section. Yeah, I mean, with Resident Evil fans, you have one side of it where you start the games of 1, 2, and 3 of being this mix of, hey, it's suspense, suspense, horror, and a little bit of action. And then you get to like 4, 5, 6, and they drifted away from that, and they're like, it's more action than horror. And then we finally have pivoted back with 7 being Biohazard and Village, where we go right back into the horror aspect. So, and again, yeah, like I said, the story really compels that. You have interesting characters like Leon, Chris Redfield, and these other important characters that really, like Ethan Winters in the new one, where there's specific things that happen, but at the same time too, it's not as emotionally driven as like The Last of Us, but it still has those jump scare moments, those moments where you're like, hey, I recognize that guy. He was a person in Resident Evil 3. Like, it's pretty fan based too. I'm trying to think of what the word is. Fan rewards.
Sounds like fan service, but like
That's
not
that's
fan
what it
service.
is. Yes.
Yeah.
But it is fan service, but not the kind of fan service that we're thinking of.
Yes.
Not the sexy kind.
Yeah.
No, I actually have never played a Resident Evil game before fully through. I've played them, a few of them, kind of the beginning sequences, but never fully through. I've been really meaning to try Village, which is like 7, right?
It's 8, yeah.
And I think it's on Game Pass. Oh, it's on 8, yeah, or it is 8. I mean, I've been meaning to try that one. I remember the one thing that stopped me from playing Resident Evil when I was younger was you had to like stop to aim and like shoot things,
Yeah.
and then like so that like drove me crazy, and that was what like turned me off of it. But I think in the newer ones you don't, and so that's why I was like, I do want to try one of these new ones and give it a shot.
Yeah, so what's nice is if you start with Biohazard or Village, it's the start. So Biohazard's the start of Ethan Winters' story. So Village continues that story in the next one. So, but what that one is, it's a first-person shooter. So you don't have to worry about. It's not like the other games where it's third person. You have to run and you have to kind of hold and point and shoot.
Yeah.
It's more of that first-person shooter.
Yeah, I would recommend starting with Biohazard just because that's almost like starting a new arc. Yes, they bring in characters from previous games and like there's a lot of like, oh shit, he's in this one, but it isn't the crux of it.
Yeah,
You don't like need it to be able to enjoy the
Correct.
game.
no,
You're saying.
they basically the character will show up and you'll just they play it off as like, hey, I'm here. Like we're an agency, we're here, and that's it. But a lot of people that would play it would be like, oh my gosh, it's that guy. I know who that is.
Right.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. So and that's what Biohazard really does, is it's a very self-contained story, and that's why a lot of people liked it.
I say that because I started with Biohazard, so I truly do understand there were those small pieces where I was like, I feel like this is important, but here we are. But
Yeah.
overall, I still adored the story of it. I thought it was incredibly fascinating, and it wasn't just a typical like zombie first-person shooter.
The one thing that's kind of interesting that I've noticed as we've been talking about this discussion, and I never really put together with horror video games, is that like almost all of them are first person style. And I think it's because it puts you in the shoes of the character a lot more than a game where you can see your character separately. You know what I mean? It makes it more scary to be able to be having to control something where you're seeing through the eyes of the character of like what you would be seeing if you were there. But yeah, I never really put that 2 and 2 together. And it sounds like Resident Evil, because I know it used to be over the shoulder, kind of like third person. It sounds like even they've kind of made some of the newer titles first person. So yeah, I know that like Outlast is also first person. A lot of them are.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, I was kind of going through and like looking at a bunch of different games that like I have on my list that I want to talk about, and I was like, yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
if you're talking about first person, like the one that I would recommend that I've played over and over again are two, and it has to be Alien Isolation and BioShock are the two that are like first person that will still terrify me to this day, because it mixes that sci-fi aspect of like, yeah, we're in the future, there's futuristic weapons, I have this, but still even having those things will screw you over. Like you can still get hurt, you can still die. And like when it comes to Alien Isolation, there's something hunting you on the boat, on the boat, yeah, exactly, on the spaceship, and that scares the absolute crap out of you. Like if you make a wrong move, if you turn a corner or you start banging on something to open a door, all of a sudden that you could turn around and then you get killed by the xenomorph or something like that. It's the same thing with like BioShock, a little bit more dumbed down though, but it's the same thing where you're just hearing what?
Well, yeah, the AI, I think, is what he means. The AI in Alien Isolation. Well, the AI in Alien Isolation is actually really advanced.
Yeah.
Like the alien
Fair.
moves very like it's not on like a route. You know, it's not like playing that game multiple times through. You could actually it would have different aspects of like the alien coming at you from different angles and stuff like that. I think that's a really cool feature of that game. I played the hell out of that game, but I never beat it because it was too long.
I was just waiting for the BioShock community to be like, it's not dumbed down.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is like I wanted to take
take
that back, is like with the BioShock, you know who's in the room. Like if you look up a guide, it's going to say, hey, there's 4 people in the room and blah 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 blah. But when it comes to Alien Isolation, it's like it's going to show up. Like I can give you a guide on, hey, you need to go to point A, point B, point C, but that doesn't mean that oh crap, I have to find a place to hide because all of a sudden the alien's here. There might be a cutscene or two where, hey, the alien shows up and you have to hide quick and do that. but every time I've played it, like there'd be a scene where I'm like, oh, I'm fine, run, 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 and then all of a sudden I'm above a vent, and then I get smacked, and all of a sudden I'm getting taken up, and I'm getting eaten. I'm like, oh, great, I guess I'm restarting where I didn't save last time, so woohoo.
Mhm.
Oh, and you've all said this a little bit. When you say first person shooter, like, are you always having to work your angle and the direction that, like, you know what I mean? Like with the screen, like going side to side and up and down, all the things that I have trouble with. The reasons
Yeah.
why I suck at Overwatch.
Yeah, Vanna's not super good at doing the dual sticks, like movement and aiming at the same time.
Yeah, I am the exact same way. I would say that like it depends on the game. Because like it depends what you include as horror. Because like if you think of like a Five Nights at Freddy's, especially the original ones, it's not going to be like that first person shooter aspect where you have like a full circle worth of area that you can go around because it's just going to be what's in front of you in that moment. So you are moving side to side, but not in the same way. So it's also going to depend on like there's some of these games that can be done in VR. Like Phasmophobia can be done fully in VR. And so at that point,
Oh, there you go.
all of your movement, yeah, isn't going to be with the dual joystick. It'll be much more of you in the moment, which is super duper first person.
I would like that. That sounds like fun.
It looks terrifying. Markiplier did that, and he was freaking out the whole time. It's terrifying from what I've seen and what
Yeah.
I've heard about it. The one that I was gonna say that Vanna probably would like as a horror game if she doesn't like the first person shooter aspect, Until Dawn. It's like a movie. Or The Quarry as well is another one. So they're two story based kind of games where it's kind of like Telltale, if you've ever heard of Telltale games, where it's situational based. So like you choose the dialogue that you want. It's a third person, so you get to walk around and like open a door or check something else.
Like Life is Strange. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's a dating sim where you still get to pick everything and people's emotions change based on what you say. I know you understand that one, so
Yeah, that I could get behind.
thank you. Cause same. Yeah, there's like a bunch of just different versions depending on what type, but a lot of them are going to be first person, or you have to go into the settings and change it to third person if they have that option. Like that's why you see a lot of like there was a recent Resident Evil like live stream that was talking about a remake where they've actually made it so that you can be third person in part of it. And that it was like something that people had asked for, but it wasn't something ingrained in the game because that does take you out of it more. Because then you're the omnipotent, God leading this person rather than being the person.
The first person elements in some of these games we talked about also, like Outlast, is not as demanding when it comes to controlling the moving and looking around and moving down halls and stuff as some of the other ones, like especially like Bioshock. Like you're actually having to aim and shoot guns in that one. You're not doing that in Outlast. So that would be something. That'd be something worth giving a shot and having Vanna try out. I think that'd be pretty cool.
It'd be fun.
Yeah.
I'm always down to make anyone play horror, but especially our wonderful Animal Crossing weeb.
Animal Crossing has its own kind of horrors, having to pay
Yeah.
off your
Ooh.
loans and
That's right. It's
It's
a little more
real-life
real.
horror.
So many bells.
yeah, it's more of your real life horrors. You're like, dang, I wish I was getting chased by a zombie and not paying off thousands of dollars in debt.
I learned how to cheat the stock market, all right? I know how turnips work.
Spoken like a true capitalist.
Oh my god.
Pump and dump.
Animal Crossing, America's true capitalism.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
But actually.
It's so true.
I was gonna say, speaking of the games as well too, like I know that we talked about first person and everything like that. I know one, and I'm sure Holly was probably gonna transition into it, but one that she really likes is called GTFO, and it is kind of like a first person shooter as well too, and it actually has a pretty fun. I haven't played it yet before. It's one of those ones that we were talking about that's like maybe we should do a live stream at one point and play it as all together. But
Yeah, so GTFO is my personal favorite game. If y'all remember from my comfort games in a previous
I
episode.
do.
yeah, I know.
in our nerdly wed game. So GTFO is an interesting take on a horror game because it's actually built to be a multiplayer horror game. And that usually if you have multiplayer, you end up with something like Phasmophobia, which ends up devolving into being more comedic after a while because you kind of learn it becomes more, what's the word? Gosh, I just can't think of words today. When things formulaic.
Yeah.
Phasmophobia becomes more formulaic. You know the different things you have to do to rule out these different things. Like you can just kind of go. Versus GTFO, everything is different every time. It's just a random roll. The buildings are all going to be the same, but not the where everything is. So I really enjoy it because it has that creatures. It's also really dark and dank. It's got actually a pretty cool like background story of why these people are here and what they're doing. I won't spoil anything, but it's a unique take that I haven't seen another game do as well. People have tried, but I feel like GTFO does it really well.
Yeah, it's cool. I'd be down to try that out for sure.
Yeah, from the
It's fun.
gameplay that I've seen where she'll be watching it, it actually looks like a lot of fun. It can be very comedic as well too. Depending on especially us being new to it and Holly being the expert, would probably be a lot of moments where I'm like, okay, I did this thing. Why did you do that? Oh, I thought I was supposed to, but
So I was gonna say, I think though that one thing, especially if you're not a big horror game player, so for those listening, if you're like, well, I've never really played a horror game before, you could try any of these on the list, but here's my like recommendation for it. If you try any of these on the list, the best way to make a horror game not as scary is just if you just start like running through and like doing stuff, you're just gonna like you'll get killed by like the monster, and then you're like, all right, I gotta go this way now. And like if you have to redo an area a few times, it super loses its scary side, and it just becomes a
Yep.
lot more like I don't know, like when I was playing that Scorn game recently, like there was a part where I was kind of getting scared, so I just held down the sprint button and just started running, and I ran up on like this monster, and was like, oh, excuse me, and like ran around it and like kept going, and it like
Oh,
totally
pardon me,
lost the
sir.
element. Yeah, totally lost the element of like trying to be scary like it was trying to be because I just like ran up on it, was like, oh, and like ran around it instead. So I feel like if you're kind of like if you get into that, that's kind of how horror is, right? If you get into the mindset to make yourself scared, you can. But also, if you're just like beelining through things and you're like, I died. Okay, I got to restart. Okay, I ran this way. Okay, I died. I got to restart. It loses the scary element for sure. So it's always a good way to like dip your toes into horror games, and then eventually you'll probably want to kind of scare yourself because you'll start liking it, and enjoying it more too. I think.
yeah, I was gonna say, Adam, that is literally how I got into horror movies. Is either A, I read the book, so I know what happens in the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
or B, was like B and C was either watch a review on it. So like there's a guy on YouTube that's called Dead, his channel's called Dead Meat, and he literally goes through the kills through horror movies and goes, okay, it was dumb, or like, hey, this happened, like all that stuff. But at the same time too, you're watching it as it goes, and they're talking about like they talk about the behind the scenes and everything like that.
Behind the feet.
What?
Behind the features is what I was trying to say, but not
Oh,
behind the
that makes
feet.
so much more sense.
Yeah, man. I was
Like,
like,
how did you
like
Freudian
foot
slip into
fetish, like
feet?
dropping in. Yeah, I was like, what?
I'm gonna hang up now.
Oh,
gonna
I'm
say
so glad that you
features.
said something, Holly. I was like cracking up over here, like silently, like, wait, what?
This is gonna
Behind the feet.
this is gonna be a TikTok, isn't it?
Oh, you know it, babe. Kylie loves feet. Confirmed.
Yeah, that's the title. Oh God, yes.
Anyway, no, but like B is watching the review of it or something like that, or even with B, like when I was like, okay, I really don't know. Like when I first started getting into like the horror stuff, and Halloween is considered to be like a masterpiece, but no blood. It's just a little bit of jump scares and stuff like that. And it wasn't exactly scary. And ever since I was a kid, I was like, it is the scariest movie I've heard. And I would literally just rewind. I just like kind of like go through and fast forward through it so I could watch it in fast pace so I know what happens. And then go back and watch it, and I was like, this is not scary at all. I know when, okay, he's gonna pop out there. All right, there we go. it's once those things are like taken away, it's less scary. It's still entertaining to watch it because after I go through, I'm like, okay, I know it. Jump here, jump here, jump here. It helps me understand that, but I still love the story. I'll watch it. That's usually what happens. So those are my
I
recommendations.
feel that. Mhm.
Not feet.
So, for now, love you. So I feel say it back.
I love you.
Thank you.
Now that
I
was
feel like-
scary.
I know. Very scary.
Say it back.
Horror. What can I say? It's in my it's in my veins.
Awesome.
So I feel like we've kind of talked about some fairly similar games and then like a couple random outliers, but I feel like the one that I know for a fact Adam is really into and a lot of people are is like the Soulsborne games, where those are more on like that atmospheric side of the house and like hard too. So it's not going to be like your Until Dawns or your Outlasts even, where it's like you can play them easier and just learn more of the story. So Adam, I'll let you go for this one.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're totally right. I think that the scariest one of all those is by far Bloodborne, and that's because it has a very Victorian, what is the type of like
Victorian
scary...
gothic horror kind of.
Yeah, gothic, but it's like with Cthulhu and stuff. What is that called?
Eldritch.
Eldritch. Yes, it's got like that horror element to it. It's definitely so early on, in Hollywood, you're talking about like the stuff that kind of scares you as the creatures. I actually am like fascinated by them, and especially like in a game like Bloodborne, I really like I have the Dark Souls 2 like hardcover art book. I really like looking at the designs of the monsters and the creatures.
Totally.
I watch like Vatividya on YouTube. He talks about all the lore and stuff, and he has like really good, like video clips of. So I like looking at all that. Playing through Bloodborne, it's a very dark, very depressing atmosphere. There's no real happiness in it. So it's definitely the scariest of all those Soulsborne games. But yeah, it goes back to what we were saying. It's scary when you're going from point A to point B when you're fighting a boss. There's not really a horror element as much as there is like you're trying to really but for me at least anyways, like I'm not scared anymore. I'm trying to like really focus and like memorize the boss's patterns and stuff like that. So it becomes less of a scary and more of a video game, gameplay stuff. But yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. I really, really like Soulsborne.
Yeah. I just know that you've been playing them for years.
Yeah.
So
no.
As long as I've known you.
It's also probably one of the only ones we've talked about really that's not first-person shooter. It's third person, and you lock on to enemies or don't lock on to enemies to kind of control, like, you can move obviously the camera around too, but yeah, it's a little different in that sense too, I suppose.
Yeah, it's on my list for games to play because you've recommended it so many times. But at the same time too, I'm like, I get frustrated after playing like a game that's that hard, where I'm like, okay, I can't beat it after the third time. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. So like, I have to get into that mindset of like, okay, I'm gonna die, and it's gonna happen over and over. And I just got to once I get through the encyclopedia of games that I have still to play, then
you memorize the patterns of the bosses for sure.
Gotcha.
Well, and also it does have, that's one of the other nice things about pretty much all of those Soulsborne games is you can play co-op. So we could play together.
Oh, true. Yeah. All right. I did not know that.
Games are super hard. But I have a weird question. It's on topic but off topic. You would all know. What was Slender Man and why was it so big in 2012? I have to know.
I actually know this.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what it is too. Go ahead, Holly.
Yeah, go ahead, Hall.
Oh, you had...
No. Trauma is all I'm going to say. To me...
Oh, so you thought it was scary?
Yeah, it was
terrifying. I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. It's a Slender Man. He's some tall, like, Norwegian in the forest chasing you down, and you're like... he's like, you're going to have to eat minsk fisk or something like that, whatever weird fish they eat, and like, the Slender Man's coming to get me. Like, I don't know, I never really... It does. It takes place in like Norway. Have you seen like the tractors and stuff? Or somewhere European. I don't know. Anyways, Slender Man, not that scary, but it was a big deal. You are correct.
Oh, that's Slender Man coming for you, yeah.
That's
Oh,
that's
don't
how I
take my
picture it.
pages.
He's trying to make me
Yeah.
pick up his book.
So Slenderman in and of itself is like kind of a creepy pasta at its core. There's actually
You're
a
gonna have to
really
explain what
good.
that is, probably too.
Do you
A
know what a creepy
creepypasta?
pasta is?
I do, but I don't think everyone else
Okay.
does. I think for the listeners, that might be a good thing to just give
Fair.
a quick,
So
you know.
a creepy pasta is how do I
It's like a scary like story, kind of like a.
it's kind of like a Reddit thread, like it's
Mhm.
as if like a Reddit page that was devoted to like creepy shit.
Yeah,
Like creepy
it comes from like
stories or
copy paste, and then people would say copy
yes,
pasta, and then they were like creepy pasta. That's the evolution
right.
of it. It's not an Italian dish, is what I wanted to basically get at.
I have the definition. Creepypastas are
Perfect.
horror-related legends that have been shared around the internet. Creepypasta has since become a catch-all term for any horror content posted onto the internet. These internet entries are often brief, user-generated paranormal stories intended to scare the readers.
Perfect. Yeah, that.
There you go.
So it started out as one of those where it was just like this legend of this really tall, slender man that didn't have a face, and he would basically the whole point was that there was games that were made too about it where you had to collect all of the pages and Slenderman would be following you and trying to get to you before you could collect all the pages. There is a really good documentary. It's actually not very good, but it's fascinating. About honestly, but it's about these two girls who ended up killing one of their friends because Slenderman had them do it. Basically, like that was part of what they believed after being so ingrained in like the Slenderman community. It's fascinating how much like people can take this creepy pasta and then make it their whole personality.
Yikes. For
It's
those
wild.
listening, that's a big yikes. Don't do that.
Yeah,
no,
don't do
would
that.
not
Would
recommend
not
it.
recommend. So I feel like Slenderman is now on its way more out, but it did like reach a very high point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that 2012 point and then shots almost straight down.
Yeah.
It was a big deal for a while.
Yeah. It was.
Yeah, and what an easy Halloween costume.
Yeah, just a white body morph suit and then like a suit on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like the Slender Man was wearing a suit the whole time he was chasing you. So he looks like he's chasing right? Isn't he wearing a suit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like he's just trying to like serve you. Like you're like
Well,
you're, like,
you
trying
know,
to
when
run
you
from
go
it.
to meet God, you got to look nice.
Yeah,
That's a song quote for anyone that
that's
is able to pick up on that.
Slender Man. There was when I was first walking on the beach, there was 2 steps of footprints, and then when I was turned around, there was just one, and it was Slender Man was there carrying me. Isn't there something like that about like Jesus? Yeah.
Yes.
But
Oh my
instead it's
God.
Slender Man, and he's really tall, so you're like, hey, when you put me down, be careful. I don't want to fall from up here.
Yep. There it is. That's the whole creepypasta, actually. Now
Yeah,
you've heard
that was
it.
how it ended. Yeah.
Oh dear God.
Okay, so Vanna, after hearing all of these different games, and a little bit of movies too, what would you say would be the scariest to you?
Probably Alien Isolation. I would
Mm.
hate being hunted, and I would not want to have to fight it.
You would not enjoy spending time with Topaz then, my cat, because that's all she does to Tyler's cat, Quill, is hunt.
Quill lives.
Honestly,
Quill lives
honestly, that's a
Alien
good pick.
Isolation every day.
Alien Isolation's a great pick. I actually think it was one of the scariest games I've also ever played because it truly is like it's a scary monster that's hunting you and you're out in space, so there's no logical escape. Like we talked about the idea of like you're telling the character like, why don't you just go do this? Well, when you're on a spaceship out in space in the middle of nowhere, like they can't just like get in a truck and drive away. You know what I mean? Like you are actually stuck there with this alien. So you have to figure out the stuff that the game wants you to do. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good, and there's a lot of other scary things in that game too, like androids and stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty freaky.
Yeah, I think for me, when I think about Alien Isolation, there's so many parts that are scary, but the alien itself is not. And that's
Mhm.
because I know exactly what it looks like. I know what it does. I know like its whole thing. So similar to talking about like A Quiet Place, it falls into that for me because it's like there's been so many movies, there's been so much done with it that like the creature loses it for me.
Yeah.
But it's got all the tension and atmosphere that you could ever want from a game.
Yeah.
Yeah, the atmosphere of being stranded on a spaceship in space is pretty terrifying just by itself. Even without
Yeah.
anything else, that's terrifying.
You right. I mean, that is literally like Prey.
Yeah.
The game Prey.
Or
but
Dead Space,
that's
or I
some
mean,
other
there's a
time.
ton of other
Yep.
yeah, we don't need to go into, but yeah.
A whole bunch, yeah. And Vanna, let's say that out of all these games that we've talked about, you had to play one of them to completion. What game do you think you would want to play?
Probably either GTFO or The Last of Us.
Last of Us.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I feel some type of way about one of those two games that you mentioned. I really like The Last of Us as well, but like GTFO is my favorite. I was expecting you to say more like something like Five Nights at Freddy's or Phasmophobia or something that didn't have the duel that you were talking about, because GTFO and The Last of Us are both pretty heavy in that.
Yeah. But we have The Last of Us, and maybe we'll fire. I think you've seen me play a little bit of it.
I don't know.
It
I
is
can't remember.
very good.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Good picks.
Well, awesome. Well, that was exciting just to like be able to talk about horror and to be able to get like Vanna's hot takes as someone that is not into horror. Please, again, excuse her voice as she is recovering. But thank you all for listening. Adam will be holding the reins in the next episode. So this is coming out right away on the 31st, which is really exciting to have our first like spooky Halloween episode, but also just to have our first like holiday based episode. So please always give us feedback on Those Couple of Geeks podcast info at gmail.com. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube. We're Those Couple of Geeks podcast on just about dang near everything. I'm also making TikToks that come out Tuesdays and Thursdays. If there's ever any ones that are outside of Tuesday and Thursday, it's bonus content. We love that. So find us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify. I mean, we're pretty much everywhere, y'all. So thank you all, and stay tuned for our next episode.
Bye-bye.
Stay spoopy, y'all.
Bye.